And then when I came back, then the next thing was that I wanted to build a house. And money I'd saved up, I figured I could pay for about a quarter or a half a house. And so anyway, in our deal, my dad says, okay, he says, pick out a spot on the place and you can build a house. And
now, had you met your future wife yet?
No. No.
You decided to build a house, get ready.
In my own mind, I wanted to build a house and I wanted to furnish it and then get a wife. That was my way. It didn't happen that way.
How did it happen?
It happened at my brother's chivalry. My girlfriend stood me up and her boyfriend stood her up. And I was feeling sorry for myself, and I was having a beer, and she wanted some of my beer, and I had a quart bottle. And she said, can I have some of your beer? I said, no. I says, there's not enough for you and me. And I said, there's no more. And I knew there was beer because I had gotten 3 cases of it. And there were quarts.
In quart jars?
Quart bottles,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the next thing I know, she comes by and she sets a bottle down on the chair beside me, and we conversed, and I found out she was from Alaska, and then found out that my twin that I've always called a twin was in Alaska, went to school with her. And from then on, we met again, and pretty soon, June 10th, 1947, we got married.
Well, that's wonderful.
And
let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you explain what a chivalry is? A lot of people may not know that.
Well, my chivalry is when my brother and his wife got married, we went to their house and celebrated to disturb them for the evening, basically. And you did things like short sheeting the bed or hiding different materials around so that they couldn't find it, just anything to give them a little bad time.
Now, when you short sheet a bed, that means that you take one of the sheets
and fold it halfway.
Halfway up, so they go to get in and their feet won't go.
Right.
So the chivalry involved noise and pranks, right?
Well, just basically having a good time.
Having a good time, yeah. So anybody that got married, if they had friends, they'd get a chivalry.
Well, truly, it wasn't always happening, but it happened then.
Well, it's good that you went to that chivalry, right? Because you met your wife.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was worth 62 years worth.
Right.
Yeah.
And her name was?
Dorothy.
Dorothy.
Yeah.
Dorothy
Williams.
Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how many children did you have?
3 boys. Yeah. Then the 2 oldest now, both are retired.
So talk about your early married life.
Yeah. Well, basically, I went back to work with the Niles Tower. They held a job during wartime, and that was the law. And
the law was they had to hold jobs for the military?
Yeah,
okay.
For anybody going into the service or what have you.
Okay.
Okay. And we were not really considered service, but we were still indirectly. Anyway, we were not veterans until 30 years after the war was over.
We meaning the Merchant Marines?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when we became a veteran, 30 years after World War II.
So you had no veteran benefits?
No. I had the opportunity of 1 month, I think, of education. I would have gone back to school.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So that kind of,
it was all run out. The time had run out, yeah.
The GI Bill.
So, yeah. So anyway, I worked at Niles Tower, and then the trains were less than usual, so they didn't need the leverman. The operator could handle the levers and do the manipulation of the plant. And then I went to Niles, talked to one of the signal supervisors, and his son and I went to high school together. And so consequently, I asked if I could get a job, and he gave me a rating of 2.5 years as an assistant signalman. And to be a journeyman, you had to have 4.5 years of service with the railroad. So now this gave me 2.5 years. And so it wasn't long, I think within 6 months, I was up on the Altamont with the signal maintainer and a lead signalman and 3 other. We're all in a motor car. And going down towards what's called the Delta Mendota Canal off the Altamont Pass. And the operator of the motor car saw another car coming around a curve quite a ways down. It was quite a ways. And he went to hit the brakes on the motor car, and he's the handle's in his hand, and he says, "Jesus Christ," he said, "the brake is broken, you know. We couldn't stop." He says, "Jump," you know. And we were moving fairly good, and he yelled, "Jump" again. I was first off, and I had a place the ground was pretty level where I jumped, and I was able to keep standing up. And the other 2 fellows that were on my side got off, and they got off without falling. But the lead man, Eddie Freitas, I know Carmelita Freitas from here, or Carmelita Burge. Anyway, Eddie jumped, and when he jumped, there's no place to go. The ballast was on a taper, and he had a Jungle Jim hat on, one of the old cardboard Jungle Jim hats. And when he went off, he tore up his hands. They were all cut up. His hat cut the top off of the front bill of it, and his face was cut somewhat, not too bad. And I went to him and looked at him. He says, I'm hurt," and I looked at him, and I just see superficial. I don't see anything. And I happened to look back and saw the operator of the motor car. We called him Okie, and I said, "Okie's hurt." So I quickly left Eddie and went back to Okie, and Okie's leg was underneath him, and he had pulled all the tendons around his knee, and he was off work 9 months. So,
but he lived.
He lived, yeah. And yeah. But Eddie all his was just superficial, nothing broken. So anyway, it just happened that there were some surveyors took them to the hospital, and the rest of us, I don't remember how we got back. Somebody took us back. Yeah. And the 2 motor cars collided. Yeah.
So the people coming up the hill?
They just stopped and got off the car. They knew something was wrong. They saw it.
So they got out of the car in time.
They got off, and the car said, boom, you know, right? Yeah. Wow. So anyway, that was what ended up there.
That they weren't more serious.
You know, so then they gave me the maintainer's job. So I was maintainer at Altamont. Now I'm just, only a few months of
you didn't have your 4.5 years in yet.
No.
Yeah.
So then, right after that, then I became a lead man, which was an assistant foreman, and I was never really a signalman.
So you were a career railroad man. You know,
42 years.
42 years. Wow.
Yeah, I ran big gangs, I'll tell you. Yeah.
Okay. How did things change in this vicinity, in this town, after World War II?
Well, the things that changed were that people had a little more money. They were building houses, what have you. And George Bunting, the Centerville, was the most beautiful person for helping young people like me get their houses built. And
now, where did he work in the bank, or?
No, he had P.C. Hansen Lumber.
Okay.
At Centerville and at Niles. He had both places.
So he helped you get your
Yeah.
lumber for your house.
Yeah, and there was paint or materials. So anyway, most of the stuff I got from him. If he didn't have certain things, then I had to get it elsewhere. But I had a relative in San Francisco that worked for a lumber group. He was more of a salesperson, and he would tell us where to find something. Things were hard to get.
Yeah, you forget how scarce things were because everything had been used for the war effort.
Yeah, right. And they hadn't restocked.
They hadn't restocked.
Yeah.
So this was before you got married, though. This is when you were building your little house.
Yeah, but finally, it wasn't too long. We were all building we were, getting the house built. It just started with the foundation and had hardly anything done before I got married.
So, is that near the Bunting, what's known as the Bunting Sanborn house?
Yes, okay, but that was, the Sanborn house isn't old. It's one of the oldest in the area here. And still there.
So, it's still there?
Yeah.
And then your father built a house? Or the Bunting house? Who built that?
Now, are you talking Centerville or are you talking our place, my place?
Okay, I thought you were near Mission Boulevard and the creek.
Bunting Lane, right there.
That's Bunting Lane.
Yeah.
That's your house.
Yes.
And that's the same as the, I guess.
That's Sanborn Place.
Are there two houses or just the one?
Two.
There's two, right?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, the old house is still there. My house is gone.
Okay.
The water district got rid of it.
Yeah, that's a sad story.
Yeah, that's another story.
That's another story, an unhappy story, right? So, you had 3 sons.
Yes.
And their names are, James is the oldest?
Yeah, James, the oldest. Yeah, he worked for Ma Bell. He's retired now from the telephone company.
And then Lee?
Lee is a machinist technician that does fine grinding, fine work and what have you, and he just retired. And David was a graduate Lutheran minister, but he's taken out on disability.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what did your family enjoy doing together?
Fishing, hunting.
Really?
Oh yeah. That was one thing. In Tamales Bay, we'd go up and clam and abalone and go out in the ocean, salmon fish and codfish. Just that was, every year practically was a great vacation up there. And the Lawson family at Dillon's Beach and Tamales Bay, my cousin Carrie Lawson was an Overacker, Carrie Overacker.
Oh, so you had a family connection.
And had a family connection. So, and she would come down here with her husband Sil Lawson when my grandmother Fleta would have family get-togethers for, like at the Belleville Hotel. She'd rent the whole hotel and have a family from all around come around. And Justice Overacker would be on one end of this long table and a 30-pound turkey, and my dad would be on the other end of the table with another big platter with a 30-pound turkey. And us kids would all be put off into a side room where we had our little favors and our little poppers and what have you for something, for celebration. And our little nut favors.
Wow,
then,
that was a big family.
It was big. And then my grandmother would come in afterwards and say, all right, all you young ones come out and get acquainted with your relatives. And then we'd go out and meet our different relatives. And she was really family, you know. It was something that was nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Bunting family was really large.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Lots of relatives.
Yeah.
And were most of them farmers or variety?
No, all different types of things. No, the Heinz 57.
Oh, okay.
And engineering, you know, mining. You go to it. The electrical, just all different types.
But most of them fairly well educated then.
Most of them, yeah. I think I'm the only one that was a dropout.
Well, you dropped out of high school for a good reason, and then you weren't eligible for GI Bill, so you went right into marriage, and that was it.
No, I got my education in the field.
You did, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, what values did you try and teach your children? You came from a grandmother that taught you, and so were you? How did you instill those in your children, in your sons?
Well, I was firm. The point being that you had to have control of your children. You want them to have respect for the people that were around, so that you didn't have repercussions coming back at you. So so the kids knew that, you know, if Dad said something, he meant it, you know. And I didn't have to beat the kids, but once in a while they get a good swat in the butt, and you know. And I never slapped a face. But my dad could reach in an old touring car. He'd be here, and he'd get you clear in that back corner. He could reach you. I don't know how. So you behaved, you know.
What about your wife? Did she do the disciplining, or did she leave it to you?
No, she was good. No. We worked together. Yeah.
So what kind of values? I guess the same ones you were brought up with.
Well, that's right. There's a lot of love in the family. A lot of love right now. Yeah. And my kids all hug and what have you. Hugging is a wonderful thing. And
so when did you start them to work on around the house or in the? Did
right
you
away.
Have a garden?
Right away. Yeah, okay. They all garden, and they all garden today. All of them.
So even though you were in the railroad, you kept up with.
Oh yeah, gardening was in the family. That something that my dad used to do if he wanted his kids to stay home. We didn't know this, but it seemed like every time that he and Mom went somewheres, that they'd be gone a day or something, or many hours, there would be 5 pounds of onion sets to be planted in the garden. And all of a sudden you had a certain plot of ground that you had to spade and cultivate and plant those onions in there. And that kept you out of trouble. Now, we used to like to swim, you know, and what have you, in the pond, or hunt and do all kinds of different things there. And one of the deals was these neighbor kids would want to go swimming. Well, we were smart enough to say, well, you're going to have to help us plant the onions, so otherwise. So
your house was near the ponds? The
oh,
pits?
yes, right there. Yeah, there's two pits, the Bunting pit and the Ford pit. They're like a pair of eyeglasses. They're about 14 acres in each side.
Okay.
And it was the old Sanborn property and the Clough property. And Helen Clough married William Henry Ford.
Oh, really?
You know, and he actually, when he came in in the early 1900s on a train from New York. And he was like a transient coming in. He worked at the Clough place as a gardener. And then Helen Clough and him became more and more acquainted, and pretty soon they're married. And one of the things was that when Ford saw the Alameda Creek Channel with the different aggregates in the ground, his brother in New York had a roofing business, and he used the pea gravel to seal a tar on roofs. And he saw the merits of it, and the next thing he's got a gravel plant going there at Niles with the help of the Fords, or the Cloughs, and the Shins. Now Shin helped them get going on the plant there, and then Ford, I don't know how he got his excavator. It was an old electric excavator, and it was run by 440, and they used to have to make lines to carry the electricity to the dredge, and it was a big one, and it did not have wheels. It was pulled on rollers. They put like telephone poles and laid them on planks underneath this, and it would pull itself along.
And it would dredge the bottom of the creek? The creek,
yeah. You know, they couldn't dredge within 300 feet of any bridge.
Okay.
Because it would weaken the base, you know, it could wash out.
So was that shipped? Where was that aggregate shipped? Was it shipped back east?
They built the Golden Gate Bridge, the foundations, the Oakland Bay Bridge, you know, shipped all over for structuring, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, and so they did fine. My dad went to work for Ford in about, I'm going to say, the early 20s, and he became superintendent for Ford at the plant there at Niles. And until they sold to PCA, he worked for PCA for superintendent for a period of time. Pacific Coast Aggregate.
Okay. Okay.
And so then after that, then Dad worked for Roots and Jameson, helped him get his plant started. My dad was very, well, he was had a engineering brain. I mean, he could do almost anything. And he helped the Alameda County Water District with several big projects. And there was an agreement years ago with Mr. Shin never to cut the fault. And Dad knew where the Hayward Fault was, and not to dig in that area. And when Dad had left the PCA, they had a new superintendent come in and what have you, and they dug on the fault and they cut the fault. And when they cut the fault, they say the water blew some 70-some feet into the air from the upper pressure of above the fault water.
What was the long-term consequence of cutting the fault?
Well, the long term was that it wasn't too long. Dad got with the water district, and they had him as superintendent of construction, and they went back in and cemented the fault.
Oh, they were able to do that.
They cemented it, but it leaked. So then they went back in and did it again, and it's never leaked since then. And then they put in a huge project into what they call the WP hole, that it's about a 30-acre or maybe bigger hole that they dug off the Alameda Creek Channel by the California Nursery and the Western Pacific Tracks.
Right there in Niles.
Yeah, and Dad helped them put in pipes from the Alameda Creek with caps on the pipes so that they could let the water in or close them off, keep the water from coming in. And that project worked for many years, and when they redid the program there, they changed it from what it was. They said all that material was still working, just as though it was just put in.
Wow,
Yeah.
good workmanship.